Welcome to the Dope Dad Podcast. This is an unscripted journey for those who are invested in parenting. There's no judgment, there's no BS, just honest conversation about what it really means to be a dad today. It's raw, it's real, and it's unapologetically dope. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. You are tuned into another episode of the Dope Dad Podcast. I'm your host, OJ. We are live in Mesa, Arizona at Podworks Studios. Shout out to Bill, my producer. Thanks for always supporting me, man. Today's an awesome episode. I've got more backup, another dope dad, somebody who I've worked with in close capacity for about a decade, somebody that I respect, admire, father of two, owner and operator of his own independent business, in addition to being a hustler and working with me. And so I wanted to get this individual out here on the show, man, and chop it up and start talking some parenting with him. Owner and operator of a craft cocktail ice company, which if you're in Arizona, in the Valley or around the Valley, this gentleman is kind of a living legend, man. He sources his product to pretty much everybody. I want to introduce to you my good friend, Kurtis Williams.
Thanks, man. That's quite the introduction, dude. I don't know if anybody's ever done it better. Thanks, man.
Put you on blast,
yeah,
man.
Put me on blast or on a stand, one of the two. Yeah, thanks,
dude,
man. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
I love the brand, man.
Thanks, man.
I use the brand. I'm familiar with the brand. I know what you put into the brand. So it's important to me that as somebody who's an independent business owner, man, like you get that recognition.
Thanks, man.
Oftentimes your product's out there for display and people just get to be a critic of it, but they don't see the behind the scenes that I see, man.
It's easy to be a critic of something you don't put a lot of work into.
Yeah, dude.
It's looking the outside in, it's pretty easy to be critical, but
for sure. Well, not to mention, I mean, the reason that you're here, managing a business, working at another company, all of the marketing and events that you go to, you've got a spouse.
Correct.
You've got two children, man.
Correct. So, I mean, it's a lot on the table, but it's fun, man. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's like, they're the driving force for me doing all these things. You know what I mean? Where it's like, could I say that I'd be doing this and hustling that hard if I didn't have a family? Maybe, but who's to say? It's that extra motivation. It's a reason to put in those extra hours, do those extra things, to do the hard things, so it can be easy later in life.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, quite honestly, bro, like we don't have the luxury of failure.
No, dude, that's not really an option, And
yeah.
I think that's kind of a underappreciated thing, when like you don't have the option of failure and it pushes you to succeed and pushes you and drives you and makes you want to be successful for an other reason other than selfish reasons. You know what I mean? I think that's a better driving force, at least for me personally, than, just being successful and flashy and whatever else on my own,
Yeah. It's interesting too. I watch people, at work, like they call out of work or they just don't feel like showing up. So they're like, nah, I'm going to take today off. Or,
we talk about that all the time.
They just go on vacations and shit. I'm like, would I do that if I didn't have responsibilities? Because I don't feel like I would do that, but maybe, I don't know if the tables were turned, man.
I mean, maybe that's a personality trait, or maybe that's a just kind of thing that's learned or inherited or developed later in age, or maybe just some people don't inherit it. Where like you're like, you sense something, you sense a force that's like bigger than yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're like, yeah, I could sit home, or I could call out, or I could be lazy today, or I could not go out and hustle do this. But like, what's that going to do to better me? What's that going to do to better my family? Like, and is this, what am I doing here? Like, what was the point of that? Like that's taking steps backwards.
Yeah.
And
you don't learn to challenge yourself.
Oh.
And even though you're like not feeling it, get the fuck up.
Get up, man.
Get out of bed, man. Go do it. Right? I'm sure you didn't want to go to the gym, this morning after taking care of the kids and getting them ready for school before you drove your ass out here to Mesa to do a podcast at 9 a.m. our time.
Right,
so
dude.
My man's been grinding since, 5 a.m. But
yeah,
I think it's just straight up, dude. It's like good old work ethic, good old fashioned work ethic is what it comes down to.
And I think I'm trying to instill that in my kids, because I know this podcast about parenting. So like, it's, I hope that my kids see that. And I think they do, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think, as we all know, anybody who's a parent, kids are incredibly observant. They pick up everything, even when you think they're not watching. They're forming habits, they're forming opinions, they're, becoming a person based on you, and what's important to you is important to your kids, whether you might not think it or not, So I think that they know, they say it all the time, for good, better, or worse, or indifferent, that, oh, dad's always working so hard. He's working so hard, and like, that's the balance too, where it comes in where I'm like, yes, I'm working hard, but I also try to be here for you guys for certain things, and that's the reason why I work hard is I want to be able to be there for special moments or be able to have the resources and the abilities to help you guys in certain points of your life, and I think that is very important, in that work ethic is not just myself, but also like passing it down on to my kids and instilling that in them, because I just see a generation of people, like we said, that just want to take the easy road, and I think having the ability to push yourself and the ability to wanting to drive is going to set you even further ahead in this next generation when my kids grow up than it did in our generation. Because like everybody pretty much worked hard, I feel like, kind of when we were growing up, and like now I think it's going to be even more of a differentiating factor for success and family future and longevity and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's funny when you say that, everything that you do and say is that it's on blast for your kids. Like they see everything. It is like being in court, right? Like everything you do and say can and will be used against you at some point in time, whether you recall it or not.
100%, man. And like, you got to be aware of that,
Yeah, for sure.
It's, you gotta mind your P's and Q's, because like sometimes you'll slip and be like, and like, you don't even realize what you're doing, and your kids pick up on that, and then you see them like exhibit that thing or do that habit, and you're like,
I may or may not have seen some of my own worst behaviors emulated by my children, which is embarrassing, because it's not like I can point the finger at anybody else. I'm like, fuck, that's totally me. I know that that's me right there. I've done that. I've been that guy, and now here it is again.
The cool part about that, I think, too, is like, it makes you like, having the kids made me take a little bit of a more like introspective lens on myself and be like, makes you see yourself a little bit more clearly, because you see weird traits that your kids do, and you're like, oh, maybe that's why my wife gets annoyed by that, because that is annoying as hell. You know what I mean?
Your secret's safe with me, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's just like, oh shit, maybe I should stop. It's pretty cool, man. Like that's been a very rewarding part, is just being like, all right, seeing these certain things and making myself a better person through the actions of and behaviors of my children, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool, man. So Carradine, my oldest daughter, she was dating a kid that we all loved, and he was awesome, man. He was like a part of our family, and that ship had kind of sailed. But I remember like being around him, and he was working while she was working. So she's worked at all three of the restaurants, and he was working at like a pizza joint or something like that. And I remember there's like a couple different situations where we're like, hey, we're gonna go to a movie, or we're gonna go to the lake and hang out. Sucks you got to work, and he's like, I'll just call out. Like I'll just call out.
Full circle what we were just talking about.
And so what I think he was trying to do was like show that he was there for us and wanted to spend time with us more than anything else. But what it did for me, like on the back end as a dad, I'm like, don't do that shit, bro. Like that actually damages your credibility with me, right? Like now you're not prioritizing the things in work that are important. And so there's times when Carradine would, she's not feeling it, man. She doesn't want to go to work. She's like, dude, I just went to school. I had a long ass day. I didn't get much sleep. I'm like, tough shit, man. You committed to this. This is a responsibility. You know what I mean? And maybe there's a way that we can figure out how to, move differently and have better sleep, or, consolidate our steps or whatever, so that you're less tired. But the fact of the matter is, like, you have a responsibility. And don't forget why you wanted to do this, man. Like, you're trying to stack that paper. You want that money. Here's how you get it. Like, it never comes easy.
No, man. It doesn't get any easier down the road either, especially if you establish bad habits at a young age. It's just going to be harder to break out of those. And it's good that she has a parent like you to enforce that stuff, because, not trying to talk down anybody, but there's certain people that I know that are just like, let their kids kind of dictate what's going on. You know what I mean? Yeah. And everybody has different parenting styles. I totally get that. But for me, it's like, I'm the same way as you. I'm like, if you take something on and you commit to this, you're finishing it out. Kids in clubs or sports, you know what I mean? My daughter just got into junior high or prep school at Veritas now, and had the opportunity to...
She going into 6th?
She's in 6th grade now. So,
yeah, man.
That's when they can start playing sports. And I told her, I was like, okay, well, you've got to do a club or a hobby or something else. You can't just do school and that's it. You know what I mean? It's like same thing in high school. If you're in sports or clubs or something, I'll help you with finances and all that stuff. But if you're not, you're going to get a part-time job. That's just the way that it rolls. That's kind of how I was raised. And so she's joined a couple sports, and her first sport she joined was volleyball. And she'd always been a very individual sport person. Like she did gymnastics and tennis and swimming. Those are team sports, but still very individually centered because it's just you relying on yourself.
Yeah.
And I saw something where I'm like, learning how to work in a team and working with others is a very important part of growing up. And so I was like, you need to join a team sport. And
integrate into society.
Yeah. And like, she has the, and it's my fault too. She has this very like ultimate firstborn perfectionist, personality.
Get the fuck out of my way. I could do it better.
And like also like fear of failure, and I'm like, and especially in a public audience. And I was like, this is going to be important for you. I need you to go out. I want you to go and join a team. So she picked a sport. The first sport was volleyball. And the first like month was just tears and trauma and just like, I felt bad for her. I did like, and my heart decided I was breaking it because I was like, oh my gosh, my daughter's so sad. She doesn't like this. But I knew down the road in the long run, this was going to be good for her, And now after that, she loved volleyball by the end of it and she enjoyed it and like integrated the team. Now she's on the soccer team, and now she's already thinking about what sport she's going to play next. So it's just, it was really cool to see the, me forcing the commitment. You have to finish this, take it on. You're not going to quit in the middle of the season, so finish this out. And by the time she finished it out, now she's a buyer and a believer into, team sports are actually pretty cool. And it's another social outlet and I can make friends doing this and
that's dope, man.
Whatnot.
Plus, it's easy to give up, right? Like it's easy to give up quick, no matter what you're doing. Even as an adult, if you don't like something or something feels awkward or it feels uncertain, then it's easy to just kind of throw your hands up and walk away, right?
Right.
But I'm a firm believer. I used to work. You remember Steve that we used to work with, and he would always say, "Hey, man, in order to find out where the path leads, it's best to wait till the end." Like you can't just chalk it up and start determining like what's going to happen down the road because you don't even know, man. Like give it the time to let it happen. And I'm sure now there's like valuable friendships and camaraderie and partnership that was established from that, the experience of volleyball and everything else. Why you think it's important for you that there's an extracurricular activity or work or something more than just school? Like why is that important to you?
I just think it rounds you out and it keeps you out of trouble, man. You know what I mean? And it keeps you up like. When I say trouble, I guess that's a different definition nowadays than it was when I was growing up, going out in the streets and getting in trouble. Like that's what we did because kids played outside. But now it's a different type of trouble where I think it's become, on-screen trouble. Where like if the kids come home, and a lot of parents are busy and life gets busy, and the easiest thing to do is like the kids jump on TV or YouTube or their iPad, and then they're buried in a screen. And that's just, I don't think that's a good like use of your free time. I think you need to be productive, constructive, or, teaching yourself something, and I think sports or extracurriculars are the best way to do that and to nurture that type of growth, so it's just always been important to me. I grew up that way too. Like I played sports, growing up my entire life. And it was very beneficial to me when I look back, and it was a great part of growing up. And I made a lot of lifelong friends through it and learning how to work with a team, for a team, lead a team, that type of stuff. There's a lot of just valuable lessons that come from doing stuff that's not just in school. You know what I mean? Like, yes, school's important, but we also know that school also doesn't work for everybody. Correct. You know what I mean? Like, and one mold does not fit all. And it's important to just broaden your horizons and experience new things. And I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's dope. I think that there's extreme value in being a powerful and impactful leader. Mm-hmm. I think there's also extreme value in being a very good follower.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean?
So like, I know how to play the lead and I know how to play support, man. I love doing both of those positions. I love putting somebody else up on, up front mm-hmm. and giving them the glory. And I love being a good support. I feel like that's kind of how like a marriage or my role in the house works, right? Like sometimes I take lead, sometimes
you're the leader in the marriage. It's good for you.
I mean, I like to think sometimes.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Baby. So yeah, man, I it's important to me to get some perspective, man. You and I have been talking about the podcast. I don't even know like how deep we've gotten into what the foundation of this whole thing is, but through my journey, man, like I've had so many crazy things happen, like really, really emotional, amazing. You and I share war stories all the time, man. Yeah. Super highs, super lows. And sometimes I'm like, man, like I can't be the only person that has like some of these really awkward or like really weird like failures or like embarrassing moments, you know, or like these like small victories that are like so impactful to me that might not be like a monumental deal, but for me it's like a crazy milestone. And so I wanted to create a platform, man, where people can share that, where people can be real and let their guard down and be honest about some of the shit that they've been through, you know what I mean? And being a parent of daughters has been like this crazy awakening for me, man, because I feel like I got a good read on guys, you know, but girls, I'm like, holy shit.
It's a whole nother world, man. You know what I mean?
It's like an entire, you know, different realm.
I only have a perspective on that level from you and my brother, because my brother has 3 girls all under 4. You know what I mean? Because remember he has twins that are 3.5 and the new one that's under a year. And I'm just like, oof, you're gonna have your hands full. You know what I mean? Already has your hands full, but like they're not even into the like what I call difficult years that I'm just starting to see with, you know, certain. I
mean, dude, there's challenges,
difficult challenges.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
there's like new obstacles that present themselves. It's interesting, man. Like people hear, you know, multiple daughters and they're just like, oh, you know, I get that a lot, you know, but I'm also like kind of offended by that shit when people do that, especially if it's a stranger. Like you and I, like we fuck around because we know each other. But you know, somebody like see me at the store and they're like, "Oh, 3 girls.
Good luck."
Like, oh, I feel sorry for you. I'm like,
why?
What kind of shit is that to say to somebody you don't know, bro? Like these are.
That's a very weird thing to say.
Yeah, I'm like these are my girls, man. Also, like you know my kids.
They're great. They're
kids. Actually good kids.
Yeah, they're good kids. Yeah, absolutely.
And so though there's like, you know, there's obstacles and challenges. There are with anybody, you know?
Correct.
So, I don't know. I just don't view parenting, I think, the way that a lot of other people do, you know?
And I think a lot of people say that stuff and just don't really realize what's coming out of their mouth. You know what I mean? They just think it's funny. Yeah. And you're like, well, we haven't even built a framework for establishing what our type of humor is. So you can't just pop off like that.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just like the alpha dad, like just, you know, what people feel like they're supposed to say.
Correct.
You know, it's like my daughter's gonna bring a boy over and she's excited, you know, and my older brother's just like, we're gonna intimidate him, we're gonna fucking, you know, you want me to be at the door? I'm like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, no, I don't want that, bro. Like, I don't want that for a multitude of reasons, but also like I want my daughter to feel comfortable. I'm not trying to embarrass her.
No, like why? Yeah, I don't. What's that gonna do? You know, what I mean?
But that's the thing. Like societally, I think that's what people expect the behavior to be, right? Is that I'm an alpha male. I assert my dominance on you or whatever. Like, you know, bro, like I don't parent like that. I'm like, hey, I want the kid to feel comfortable. I want him to let his guard down. I want him to open up. Like, if anything, I want both of them to feel comfortable because I want my daughter to bring people around and know that I'm not going to do some out of pocket shit.
Yeah. You embarrass your kid like that or it's exactly what you're saying. I think that's what you're saying is like, now they're going to go behind your back and not bring the guys around. And now you're not even going to meet the guy. And like, that causes way more problems. You don't want that.
I couldn't even imagine the stress behind that.
You don't want that, man. No way, dude.
No. And honestly, so my oldest is dude, I mean, she's almost 17, bro. And I've got a 13-year-old. And at that age, I remember what I was doing. You know, I've got an 11-year-old as well. But, you know, I was probably creeping out and sneaking out and doing shit, you know, throwing rocks and all the things,
paintball,
you know, but
trucks.
yeah, and all the things, but
But
honestly, you know, like I don't see a lot of that, man. Is that something that's on your radar or seems concerning to you in the future?
So that's what I think. Maybe I'd like to circle back to my previous point about the dangers now not being outside but being inside on the screen, man. Like kids have full access to each other now. You know what I mean? Like when I was growing up, for better or worse or indifferent, like somebody had a problem with you or somebody was saying mean stuff to you, you dealt with it at school. And then when you went home, that was your safe place and they couldn't have access to you anymore. Nowadays, kids get online, they have group chats, they have Roblox or Minecraft or whatever like games they play. You know what I mean? There's tons of them. Like I'm not getting into that, but like they can all communicate on those. Mm-hmm. And then the bullying can continue past the school walls, which I think is dangerous. Where like kid psyche can't handle that all the time when you get broken down and broken down and broken down and broken down. And you see the terrible things with like, you know, open a can of worms here, but with like young suicide and school shootings and things like that. And like, I think that's a huge part of it that, you know, if imagine when you were a kid, if like, you're like, okay, all I have to do is make it through this one period. I see this kid for maybe an hour a day in the halls and he pushes me into the walls. All right, whatever. I can deal with it. But now it's not just an hour out of the day. It's 10 hours out of your day and it's relentless. And this kid is cyberbullying and he's ruining your friendship. And it's not just him. It's easier for other people to gang up in the group chat. And now it's just devastating to a kid, you know? So that's another big reason when I say dangers of the streets versus dangers in home. It's just like, a lot of the technology is great, but it's also brought a lot of the dangers into your house, and it's hard to get away from it. It's hard to separate. And also it's easier for the kids on the other end to bully because they don't see the true reaction.
Yeah, the impact that they're having.
They're having. We're like, sometimes, if the bully, like you see some kid cry or get upset, you might be like, ooh, a little bit of your empathy that's barely developed yet as a young kid will come through and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this because this kid is actually being affected. But now it's just a screen. So it's a faceless victim. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it's good to limit all the screen time and the exposure and that type of thing after school and at home as well.
That's deep. Yeah, I can definitely connect with that, man. That speaks to me, dude. And it makes sense. The thing is, it's just a different world,
correct,
than when we grew up, And I think it's easy for parents to just say, school is the same, So it is what it is. They said something, just ignore them. Turn the cheek, look the other way, whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter
works
is,
for us, though.
Yeah,
because you saw him for an hour. Sorry,
right? No,
that's what I'm saying.
And that's right. But you know what's crazy? So I talk to my kids, and when I talk to them about school, I try to not just do like the surface level bullshit. Like, how was your day? And they're like, good. And I'm like, awesome. Anything crazy happen? No. And I'm like, all right, cool. I try to, and I actually learned this from my pops, which is funny because he wasn't like a huge part of my life growing up in school. But I learned this from him and watching him interact with my children. But his conversations like, who'd you sit next to at lunch today? Mm-hmm. And then they start using people's names and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I hear this name a lot. Are they a good friend? Like, what did they have for lunch? Did you guys like do a little trade action or whatever the case may be? So there's deeper conversation because I want to like extract information. I want to actually like connect and feel like I can get more because a kid's just going to give you as little as possible. They're tired. They're done with it.
If you give them an option for a one-word answer, they're going to give you a one-word answer.
Facts. Yeah.
Like most adults too.
Yeah.
Though, I'm good, fine. Yeah. How was school? Yeah, good, fine. And that's cool that you do that. We do the same thing, like if we can have a family dinner sometime, if it all lines up, which we try to do at least 3 or 4 times a week, which I think is important too. We can get into that, but
hugely important.
Just it's stuff like, oh, what was the favorite part of your day? Or what was the least favorite part? Why? Who did you see? Who did you talk to? What did you learn? You know what I mean? Like deeper probing questions. Just like when you see an adult, you're like, hey, how was your day? Good. How you doing? Good, man. Chilling. That's it. Yep. That's all you're going to get out of the kids, too.
That's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. I'm done. I'm done talking to you.
The thing is, too, like, I wonder if I'm guilty of being a catalyst to those types of behaviors because I work and I'm social at work. Yep. Sometimes I'm burnt, bro. My social battery is drained by the time I come home.
Empty.
And so the girls are like, dude, they're so cute. They always greet me at the door, bro. Like they'll come out of their little caves, It's like people coming out of the woodwork, and they're just like, how was work? What's going on? How are you?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm so done. I'm like, it was all right, man. It was work or it's bro.
They learn those lessons from you. That's
that's the thing. I'm like, I'm not trying to talk about work. I don't want to bring that shit home.
I get it.
I have the option to cut that off, but I guess now even having this conversation, it's more of like this realization and epiphany that I am emulating the behaviors that I'm trying to prevent them from inheriting.
But isn't it cool that they're actually interested and genuinely want to know what's going on with your day?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's what's cool about kids is like they actually want to know. You can tell in their voice and their tone and their action, whereas like your friend, spouse, whatever, whatever it may be, you might just be like, how's your day? Good. How's your day? Good. That's it. And you're done.
How's your day? And they walk by, you're like,
good to see you.
Questionable.
You know what I mean? But like your kids actually want to know. Like they actually are very, very curious, and you need to I think embrace that and encourage that type of conversation, which is good.
I'm gonna do better.
I mean, that's
actually, if I take one thing out of this fucking
podcast,
there you go. I'm gonna do better, bro. That was like
that's
oddly inspirational.
That's good, man. I mean, dude, as parents, you're learning along the way too. There's no manual for this. Nobody teaches you this. It's like there's going to be missteps. There's going to be bumps. You nailed it. That's all you can do is do better each day. It's like it's a goal. It's like I try to get a little bit better each day, learn something new each day. Improve somebody else's life a little bit each day, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do. So
circling back to the school thing and being able to just kind of like detach and get away from it, and sometimes through those conversations. There's fire drills and things like that.
Yep.
There's active shooter drills at schools.
No, that tripped me out, man. Like my kids told me like the lockdown things, I was like, that blows me away because like I feel like when we were growing up, do you remember how like, I know this sounds ridiculous. I thought I was going to be on fire a lot more as a child than I actually was. You know what the important like stop, drop, and roll
Stop,
was?
drop, and roll,
Do you remember that?
absolutely.
You ever met anybody that caught on fire?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Not
And
even
they hammered that into us, and that was like a legitimate fear that I had growing up, where I was like, oh man, like I might catch on fire someday.
Lighting bottle rockets.
Yeah,
like
you know
this.
what I mean? Yeah. But like now it's terrifying that like these school shootings are happening and they have lockdown drills and the kids talk about it. And there was a active shooter drill at this kid's school last year, you know what I mean? Where the guy didn't have a gun, but it was some crazy homeless dude that was running around the school naked. So they locked the school down because they didn't know what was going to happen. And then they send out a text to all the parents that are like, school is in lockdown, and you freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Honestly, like I appreciate this. I appreciate those text messages, but also, man, you're going to get some crazy ass dads with some assault rifles showing up on campus, man. Because,
Might have been one. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
well, you hear, like the cops are outside, but they didn't go inside. You're like, fucking why? My kid's in there.
I'm going to go in.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, that happens often, man. Carradine, at her school, there's been a couple where there's like, hey, school's locked down and something's going down. But I mean, back in the day, a kid would bring like a knife to school.
Right.
Or like, I think maybe one in 12 years of schooling, there was like a pistol, but there probably wasn't even a magazine in it.
Right.
Or
it was in somebody's locker or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But
it's become terrifying, man. The kids talk about it, and it's scary for them, but also does it just become when does it become like numb to them? Where like, you did bus evacuations growing up, you did fire drills, you did stop, drop, and roll, but like pretty soon you just stopped worrying about it. So like, is it more of like a cathartic thing for these kids where they do these drills to like, so they forget about it and they don't worry about it, or does it bring more anxiety to kids? I don't know the answer to that.
It certainly brings more anxiety to me thinking that my child going to school, anything could happen, and somebody who's struggling with mental health issues or emotional distress thinks that the only way out of this is to actually end people's lives and then their own. Like, it's fucking terrifying, man. It breaks my heart.
It's awful, man. Yeah, but and circle back again, like what brought them to that, the mental health issue. And I, whether I'm right or wrong, I have a very, very strong opinion that it's a lot of the social media, a lot of the screen time, man. It's
I would not dispute that. I agree.
Like, kids are just exposed to so much stuff at such a young age. You know what I mean? We're like, I was reading this stat the other day about screen time and exposure to certain things, and like violence is obviously there, but then there was also a thing that like scared me too, where it was like, the average like exposure, I think 25, 30 years ago to like pornographic material was like between like 15 and a half or 16. And now the average age is like 10 or something because of phones. Cause like, it's not just whether your kid has a phone, it's what do their friends have at school. Like I remember some of my daughter's friends that had phones at like 9 or 10 years old or 8, and they had access to the internet on their phone. Dude, the internet is not a filtered place. You know what I mean? And so even if your kid doesn't have access to it, what do their friends have access to, and what are they showing them at school?
It's crazy, man. I remember getting exposed to porn like at a young ass age, bro.
Yeah.
I was probably like 8 or 9 when I found a stack of like the Babysitter's Playboys.
Yeah.
And though I didn't even understand it, I got the gist of it. You know what I mean? And that actually like continued to propel through my life and created problems for me, bro. And actually like created problems between my wife and I and shit. When it's like, exposure at too young of an age, man, is really a fucking dangerous thing. I absolutely agree with that, man. And so that's something that has happened in my life personally, man, that I've like wrestled with, and trying to be a better man to my wife, and rid myself of these like horrific fucking habits that started at early ass age,
Yeah.
But that's the difference too. I mean, so like, dude, masturbation and shit like that, like that's natural, right? But the difference now that you got, a little girl and a little boy, like you catch a boy jacking off and you're just like, yo, throw that sock away. Like, don't put that shit in the washer.
Right. Yeah.
But it would be absolutely devastating to walk in on like a girl like flicking her bean. You know what I mean? Like, how do you even address that? How do you even address that situation, right? But the reality is, man, like that could happen.
And I think it's happening earlier just with, the access to all these things. You know what I mean? And it's scary. You know what I mean? And you just have to be hyper vigilant. It's not that you can be, I don't think you want to be overly
reactive
and helicopter-y, because like it is a part, but you just have to be vigilant and pay attention to like, and have those open conversations with those things present themselves.
Okay. So you got a daughter who's what, 11?
11. Yeah.
And you guys talking about sex?
Huh?
Have you guys talked about sex?
It's been a soft, brief conversations. You know what I mean?
It's presented itself.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But it's nothing like over the top. You know
Right.
what I mean? So, and that's a delicate thing, you know what I mean? Because like growing up, my parents never really had those conversations with me, to be completely honest. So I'm not really equipped and weaponized.
And there's kids in our generation who had children at, 15 years old,
Right.
16 years old, right? Like,
Right.
Let's not talk about sex and see what happens.
That was honestly kind of my upbringing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it was a bad thing. You know, I turned out decently okay, but but I'm just saying, like, there was always like, it felt like taboo, or it felt like, we can't have open conversations with this. And the same thing with you with your early, maybe it like created issues later in life about having open communications about those things that are normal in life, So I'm trying to break that cycle with my kids, but it's hard for me as a parent because I was never exposed to that from my parents. So like, how do we do this? How do we approach this? How do we like not, I guess like, and always cycle back, like, how do I not fuck my kids up really bad either? It's like, that's the main goal, is like, you try not to mess up your kids as bad as you can.
Yeah. How do I mitigate damage?
Yeah, exactly.
So I can tell you that it's something that I thought would be very, very easy for me. Dude, I'm an open cat, bro. Like having conversations with me is never really challenging. I'm always open. I'm always like, pretty honest and direct. And so my wife and I had a conversation about, periods and sex and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, like, no problem. Like, whatever happens, either one of us is equipped to have the conversation. Right. We're on the same page. But hopefully we get to address it together, right? And so Carradine starts to become a little bit older, and she's almost 17, bro. Like,
that's as a young woman, man.
Right? Like, I would just throw this out here and say,
it's almost an adult.
What age were you, right?
Yeah.
So we need to have a conversation. Bro, I have never been so fucking uncomfortable.
I bet.
Like sweaty palms, dude.
Man.
And like, I'm an easy person to talk to. And I've got it all mapped out in my head. And I open the door and I'm like,
just freeze up, right?
I don't
freeze
like
up.
this.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable.
This is uncomfortable.
I'm not comfortable at all right now. Yep.
Yeah, dude. It's, I think it would be different speaking to a young man than a young woman.
Correct.
For me, because I have the same anatomy. I have an understanding of that mental framework. And
that's also just a different conversation, I think, because of the sex of the child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the repercussions of sexual activity are so much different for a girl than a boy. You know what I mean? Like, on a whole, I think there's repercussions for both. I think one are a little bit more, I'd say, long-term damaging and permanent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's I think that's just my opinion. Like, I think that's maybe why that conversation, and obviously being a boy and talking to a boy is a little bit easier too.
Yeah.
So, but neither one of them is going to be an easy conversation. So
you think you'll be involved in those conversations?
No, I want to be, you know what I mean? But I also don't want to just be that's fucking it all up either, So I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about or what I'm doing,
Yeah, it's wild. I think that a lot of people get to this point, right? And then they're like, tap out, like abandoned mission. Like I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. I don't know if I'm equipped for this. Or maybe they get, into the bedroom and they're just like, how was school?
Right.
Like
you bail
redirect.
Pull that ripcord, dude. Bail out.
Yeah.
Well, that but like I said in the beginning of this episode, it's like you got to do those hard things so that it's easier later. You know what I mean? And that's one of the really hard things that hopefully will keep it easier or less like damaging later. You know. So.
Yeah. I definitely don't want to be the awkward dad.
Well, you're going to be the awkward dad no matter what. Just how awkward are you going to be, right? That's it. Which is totally fine.
And then like periods, periods was like a whole nother conversation. And it's something that I knew would happen. I just didn't know, I guess, like how or at what age, and what those conversations look like. And honestly, like, I was raised by a single mom, but it was me and my brother, she's an older woman and, hey, but it's me and my brother, and so I never really had that on my radar or know like how much a young lady changes when she's experiencing new, like, emotional highs and lows and kind of uncontrollable body changes and stuff. And so I thought maybe that would be like a little bit more awkward or weird for me, but honestly, that's been pretty easy to navigate. There's been a couple times, I guess, where like there's attitude and I'm like, what the fuck did I do? I take it personal, and so I need to try to, try to not be defensive, But the reality is, man, like, it's tough watching a little kiddo go through that, man, because they don't know what's going on, and you can't really do much, about it or to support it.
Do and like, let's be honest, you know what I mean? Just weather that storm, you know what I mean, and try to make it easy for them because there's nothing you can do to like
Dude, there's been
speed that along. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's been 2 times that I felt like on like some heroic shit. You know, one time one of my kids was working and they went to the bathroom and called me from the bathroom and were like, hey, something's happening here and I don't have anything to address this. And bro, I'm like, I just felt like ripping my fucking, where's my cape? Like, you got the right guy for the job. And no bullshit. Like, because I know, growing up, people are like, oh, I'm not going to go buy, tampons or pads for this person. So I'm just like, I'm like at Fry's. I'm like, talking to my wife. I'm getting the size. I'm right next to, TJ Maxx buying a pair of pants and shit. Like, I felt like a fucking hero, and that was dope.
Yeah.
And then
it's cool that your daughter's comfortable enough to call you and talk to you about that too, though, because there's a lot of kids I feel like that wouldn't be comfortable enough with their parents or just embarrassed because they haven't had that. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, or maybe not even have a parent to turn to, which would be fucking awful. You know what I mean? So,
but that's the case, cool, right? Like that happens at school, man, and you're not prepped and ready for it. And all of a sudden you have to deal with the embarrassance. And here comes the,
your peers.
The cyberbullying stuff that we were just talking about, or like everybody pointing fingers and shit.
Yeah,
so
no way.
It happens early, man. It can happen early.
Dude, the cyberbullying, to digress, like the dynamic of friendships for kids, I think, is strange nowadays. Like, I don't know, like how many groups of friends your kids have gone through, or if they've stayed with the same.
Bro, I'm glad you brought this up. This is actually an interesting topic.
Yeah, like it's interesting to see because I think that's the difference with boys and girls too. You know what I mean? Man, girls are fucking mean to each other, man. It's wild. Like, I see it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, they're like, boys will fight and be bullies and then they'll be friends the next day and just get it out. But like, man, girls are fucking mean to each other. They want to like hurt each other, like emotionally, and like, it's been tough for my daughter because she had a couple groups of friends and then like some of the girls like literally just like ghosted her. Like, and I'm like, what kind of like acceptable response or behavior is that? You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, I tell my kids, I'm like, you don't have to be best friends with everybody. You need to be nice, polite, and courteous to most people, unless they're a dick to you for some reason. But like, it's just like, there's no reason to just be mean for no fucking reason. And it blows my mind, like, how many kids are just mean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's that coming from? Like, are these parents know that it's happening? Did they encourage that behavior? Do they not care? Like, what's the difference here? I'm like, we all live in the same neighborhood. We're all trying to achieve the same goal. So like, why are you letting your kid be a complete fucking asshole? Like, I don't understand.
Makes you want to headbutt the dad right in the fucking mouth, right?
Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing here, man?
So, man, I've watched my oldest go through a couple different friend groups, and dude, it's tough. Could you imagine being a little girl trying to like find out where you fit in?
No,
dude,
man.
it's insane right now.
No way.
Insane, especially if you have a phone or social media, bro. Like,
Makes it harder.
Which expectations have you met? And based off of those expectations is which friend group you'll be able to mingle with or whatever.
Correct.
Thank God at least they're at a spot where it's uniform, because you have to get to know somebody off the merit of their behavior and their actions before you can judge them, right?
That was a big reason we sent our kids to the classical education school and put the uniforms on at a young age, because it takes away that, mask that you can wear right away, or like the judgment of, oh, this kid can afford these clothes, this kid can't afford these clothes. And that's a fucked up way to judge somebody, man. And if you
look like me, so I'll hang out with you.
Yeah. If you start teaching kids that at a young age, they're going to hold on to that for a lifetime, So I think it was really cool to like, you had to get to know somebody on base level, you know?
I like that. There's, so there's been like a couple different friend groups. My middle daughter is much more selective with who she spends her time with. She's very self-aware. Like, she doesn't spend a bunch of time with, finding out who she is. Like, she knows who she is. She's kind of a boss like that, what I mean? Which I love and respect. But she had one friend that was like her kind of like diehard. They were like best friends, for multiple years in a row. And even if they weren't in the same classroom, they were connected, right? Like, there was always this magnetic, energy that would like bring them back together, and they would hang out. And so out of nowhere this year, that friend just turned her back on her, stopped talking to her, like dismissed her, right?
That's what I was talking about with my daughter too.
And so my daughter's like, dude, she's broken. She's like, now she's like self-reflecting, like, what did I do? Like, what's wrong with me?
Girls internalize it and be like, oh, it's my fault for something.
And it's not her. This girl's like, dude, she's a little punk. But
yeah,
that's neither here nor there, because my only concern is like consoling her and letting her know, like, life isn't like this. And people actually aren't like this later on in life. This is just school shit, right?
But you remember when you're a kid, school is your fucking world.
Absolutely.
It is your world. So you can't see past that. And like, they think that like, oh my God, this friend's gone, my life is crumbling, my life is over. Yeah. And it's hard to make them realize, because I remember when I was a kid, even losing a couple friends here or there, like, ah, shit, you know what I mean? That sucks. And like,
Dude, it was
you think you're
devastating.
never going to get out of it, but you're like, yo, this is such a small little piece of the entire puzzle of your life that you're building. Like, don't ruin the 1,000-piece puzzle because 2 are missing. You know what I mean? Like, build the rest of it and check out the rest of the scene. You know, like, don't fucking worry about those 2 missing pieces. You'll fill those out later. So,
and I think part of that too, man, is that like kids change quickly, right? Their interests change, their wants and desires and needs change. Who they are as a person, they're still being shaped, right? And so you and I hang out all summer long, and then we get back to school, and now I met somebody else that's cool and has different interests. I want to be like them, and so I'm like leaving you behind or whatever. Like that's just how like kids are in friendship.
Right.
For guys, like you're saying, it's a little bit different, you know. And we've expanded our circle, not necessarily like minimized it or went a different direction. We're just like now it's a bigger group of friends, but. And unfortunately, I do see kind of that relentless attacking of young girls and making each other feel uncomfortable and shit. Bro, it breaks my heart. And honestly, there's been a couple times where I'm like, yo, are my kids doing this? Because I do want to fucking know. Dude, if my kids were guilty of that behavior, bro, I would not tolerate it. I'd be so upset.
Right.
And I would confront that, right? And so when I see other kids doing it, I'm like, where the fuck are their parents?
That's what I was saying earlier.
Who's responsible for this shit?
I'm like, what is going on here? Like, is this just like a thing that happens? Like, I don't know. You know, it's super strange to me. But the boy thing too is different because, like, I think male relationships take a lot less maintenance than girl relationships. You know what I mean? Like, case in point, like some of my friends have been gone for 3 or 4 years and they come back and we don't skip a beat. You know what I mean? But we're like. Girls is like they don't see each other for 6 months. They're like they're mad at each other. You know, sometimes, you know. And I'm like, I just see it with my daughter. We're like, you know, she's like, oh, I haven't talked to this person in 6 months. I don't know if we're friends anymore. And I'm like, well, you guys probably are. You just fell out of touch. You can mend that thing, you know. Or if my son's like, oh, I haven't seen him all year. They run into each other at the park. They're best friends. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting how that dichotomy is so different between the sexes to me.
Yeah.
At even a young age.
One thing that was important for us, once we started seeing that happen and we started seeing how it was impacting her self-esteem and the way that she felt comfortable like moving about with our oldest, is once she got to 10th grade, we were like, hey, you want to cruise out and check out a public school, a different school, bigger campus. She couldn't wait to break those shackles, man. And now she's flourishing. Her confidence is up, and it's a way bigger campus. So that's the thing about like the Classical Academy is that it's a small campus,
super
bro.
Small.
It's a couple hundred kids in that grade, and so if 50 of them are former friends and not rolling with you anymore. Bro, it's easy to feel like you don't fit in. It's easy to feel singled out and nobody wants to sit with you at lunch and stuff. And so once the kids started showing like a desire to expand and not be kind of like cornered and pigeonholed, we gave them the option. We're like, hey, you want to hit up a bigger campus and go to public school. So Carradine jumped out. Next year, G's jumping out and she's going to the same high school as Carradine.
Oh, okay.
And so that's important to us, man.
They're still at Arcadia?
Carradine's at Arcadia.
Yeah, so then they're all going to be at Arcadia?
Yep. Okay. Except Krisha will still be finishing out the Great Hearts thing. But I think they get to that age too, and they're like, hey, man, I'm changing, and my wants and needs are changing. And, the overbearing kind of like structure of that, academy, I like it as a foundation for education, but it's also not necessarily the way that the world works. So I want to give them more exposure and let them kind of find their way as well.
We're on the exact same page there because, me and my wife had that conversation, and even my daughter's seeing it, she'll probably finish 6, 7, 8 and then move to Arcadia down the street, but like, the foundation you talk about, that's why we went there, is because they teach you how to learn and teach you to love to learn, which is so much more important than the way that I was brought up in school, where it's just like, this is the answer and this is how you get there, and it doesn't matter why.
Yep.
And like we've come back to be like, this is the how and this is the why, and let's get you engaged and immersed in this, and let's find out what your passions are, and let's encourage this, and the love of learning is so much more important than the act of learning. Just like builds a lifelong foundation for success and growth, And so that's what I've seen the most from this school and in my children is the why and the love of learning and how to learn and how to be a good student, which is super cool. So when they go to regular high school, like you said, I do want them to be exposed to that bigger world because, the sheltered world of the Arcadia private, semi-private school is not the real world. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be some other stressors that you're going to have to deal with, and you need to go to a little bit of a public school to experience some of that.
My wife was private school her whole life. I was public school my whole life. and I'm super grateful that our kids are getting kind of like a sample of both.
So yeah, I was public school too, my whole life.
Yeah.
So, and I thought it was totally fine.
Did you go to Arcadia?
No, I grew up at Tempe, so I went to McClintock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It was fine.
Go McClintock.
It was fine. Yeah, man. It was fine. Go Chargers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man, it's interesting, see what your kids want to do, you know what I mean? And see what their interests are. And it's very interesting because they're all very different than mine,
Mm-hmm.
It's like things I thought that they'd be interested in because I am. Not the case.
Yeah.
So
I see that a lot too, like parents like living vicariously through their children and like, oh, I always wanted to be a singer. And you've got a good voice, so you can do it. You can be a singer, which obviously we know how that shit turns out.
No.
I feel like that's
I've seen that show, Dance Moms.
yeah. I feel like it's a common theme,
I've
right?
seen that.
Like, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing with my kids, man. I mean, I guess our mantra too is like I try not to push a ton of stuff, except like good morals and values. But
That's all you should do.
It's like my kids are like, hey, do you believe in this or do you believe in that? I'm like, hey, man, my beliefs are my beliefs. I don't want to like push you one direction or another. And like I'm down to have a conversation about that once you establish like what your thoughts are. But like gather the intel, gather the information, and come up with kind of your own ideas, man, and your own, analysis of what your beliefs are.
And that should be the way, I mean, you're not trying to make a little clone robot that just mimics what you do, Obviously, you want your kids to be interested in stuff that you're interested in, but if they're not, you should encourage it. You know what I mean? It's like that's the biggest thing is if your kid takes an interest in something, do everything you can to nurture and encourage that, because that's the love of learning and love of growth thing, If you stifle that and you're like, you know what, I didn't like that, you shouldn't like that. I've seen it though, and I'm just like, that's wild to me that you just be like, well, I didn't like it, so you shouldn't like it. I'm like, what kind of mentality is that?
It's interesting. I think a lot of people have like this perspective of parenting as like I'm raising these kids to be what I want them to be, and do things that I want them to do instead of like, hey, I'm responsible for little human beings and giving them the opportunity to flourish and grow and do what they see fit that they're going to excel at, that makes them feel good, because ultimately that's what we want, right? Like I want my kids to grow up and be confident and independent. And, because I'm raising young ladies, like I don't want them to rely on anybody, myself or another man or another woman, if it goes that way or whatever the case may be. I want them to feel like they have the strength and the knowledge and the skill set to navigate situations on their own independently, knowing they have support from us.
And I echo that sentiment because like that's the whole thing is all you can do is try to raise the best kid you can and prepare them to make the decisions when you're not there, because you can only protect your kids so much. Like they're not around you as much as you think. I mean, your kids are gone more than they're around you, right? Yeah. So all you can do is, really make those moments that you're together impactful to impress good morals, good judgment, good decision-making skills, and make sure that they're a good person, morally sound, and that knows how to navigate this world when you're not there. Yeah. Because that's majority of the time is they're going to be gone,
Yeah.
So
that's probably one of my biggest fears. Parenting, like for real, the biggest fears is obviously like, like drugs are a huge concern. Yeah. Abusive relationships are a huge concern. Like these are things that I've like actually lost sleep about. But I think too, like making good choices when I'm not there, because
that's the biggest thing, right? That's the biggest thing.
All it takes is one.
That's the biggest thing is decision making and like being able to, I echo that too. Like, dude, like make good choices when I'm not there, and like, so it's.
But the thing is that, what's fucking tough about that? You have to make the bad ones to know what the good ones are.
Okay, that brings up another point.
That's how I learn anyways.
That's how you learn, but I don't know if that's necessarily how kids have to learn nowadays. I learned that way because my parents never had those conversations about drugs and alcohol with me. So I had to go out and figure it out myself. Mm-hmm. Me and my wife had talked about this. They're like, well, what are we going to do when the kids get to an age and they talk about drugs, alcohol, other things out in the world? Are you going to tell them that you did all this stuff? And I'm going to be like, well, yeah, because it's going to open up an honest conversation, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think there's a difference nowadays with experimentation than it was when we were growing up. This might be controversial, but like, I think experimentation now with drugs is so much more dangerous than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Yes.
With the fentanyls and the very dangerous high-powered drugs that'll kill you in a flash. Where like back in the day, that weren't as prevalent. You know what I mean? No. And you could do it with a little bit more confidence that you weren't going to die.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be life altering.
Yeah, you know. So I think that's an important part of the conversation, you know, where it's like just how times have changed and technology's changed. Like, well, the world has changed, and so is the spectrum of drugs. You know what I mean? And you need to be careful with these things, and here's why. And if you're ever in trouble, don't say, oh, I can't call my parents because of this. Say, I want to call my parents because of that. You know, that's a big difference too, is like having that difference where your kids feel safe calling you if they're in trouble or in a bad situation, or your kids feeling that they're going to be in trouble calling you because they're in a troubling situation. And I want it to be the sooner, you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't want my kid to fear calling me because they're in a bad spot. I want them to want to call me because they're in a bad spot, because they know that I'm going to give them good advice, protect them, and make sure they find the safest way out of it.
Bro, that's dope. I love that, bro. That style of parenting, that mentality, that approach completely speaks to me, bro, because I'm the exact same way. Like I'm always honest and direct, and Karaden's had a couple fender benders in her ride, man, and the first thing she does is call me.
That's good. That's what you want, though. That's what you want.
And yeah, dude, like I had to reel it back, you know, when she told me, and I maybe slightly was like overreacting, you know, but the fact of the matter is, man, if it's not something that's going to be a life-altering decision, bro, like we're going to find our way through it.
Right.
You know, and I want the exact same thing that you want, you know, and my wife and I want to be able to be a resource. Like you're supposed to call me.
Right.
You're supposed to call me. I'm the one that's going to bail you out. Like I am your get out of jail free card.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So yeah, it's tough, man. Do you have like reservations between raising like a boy and a girl? Do you think like one is more concerning to you than the other?
You know, I probably should, but I don't, and I try not to, because they each are going to have their challenges, right? And they're each going to be very different, and I don't think either one of them is more valid or more damaging or more potentially dangerous than the other. They're just different. You know what I mean? So you just need to change your lens as a parent, where you're like, you know, daughter maybe a little bit more of the predatory stuff from boys, doing certain things, and my son maybe being the predator, you know what I mean? Like you just need to change your lens and like really like stay focused, kind of what we're talking about. Or like, is my kid being the bully? Is my kid doing this? Just like, I want to know that they're being a good person and they're being around good people and influenced by other good people, you know, where friend influence is such a big thing, as you know, growing up. Like who are your kids hanging out with and how are they behaving? That's a huge, I think, indicative factor of what kind of shit your kid's going to get into. Is it important for you and your wife to meet the parents of the kids that you guys are spending time with? Yeah, we do. I think that's become, you know, what's funny is like when I was growing up, I don't think my parents knew half of my friends' parents until like a year or two into like the friendship. And then maybe we went to a birthday party and they ran into each other. I feel like now that's the one good thing with social media, or like the connectivity of everybody, is that like, I feel like most of my kids, because they're making their own friends now, but for the past like 2 or 3 years when they were under 8, the friendships were made through sports or through our friends who had kids.
That makes sense.
And so we would get our kids together. So we knew the parents first, validated the parents, and then brought the kids in.
The childhood friendships just kind of worked.
Yeah, you know what I mean? They were backwards. We're like, because kids don't go out and play on the street anymore. Like I'd go out on the street, meet my neighbors. Now we met our neighbors, found out they had kids, and then connected the kids. And now the kids are friends, you know? So it's just different, you know, things are just changing, you know? So, but yeah, if my kids make friends in school, once again, the Veritas being the very small community, we run into the parents pretty quickly, you know? So, but that is important too. And like down the road when they get into high school and it's a little bit more expansive in their network, that'll be definitely an important part, you know? Because I want to see like, you know, they don't have to run their household like us. I actually don't want that. You know, I want some diversity in my friends group, my kids' friends group, but I also want to make sure that they're not complete fucking degenerates. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. It's interesting too, man. Like I feel like my wife and I are the exact same way, but I feel like we were the odd man out. I feel like when, you know, Karaden was like, hey, you know, I'm going to go over to this person's house. I'm like, I'll take you. And I'm going to say what's up to the parents. You know, I'm going to meet them and ask them if they have a dog, you know, a big ass aggressive dog. Is it a cool dog? Like, you know, do you have, you know, men in the house? Like they live here, they here now. Yeah. So
you got an uncle that lives in the basement here?
Yeah. Uncle Touchy's puzzle basement.
Uncle Touchy's tickle basement.
Fuck, man.
Yeah.
But that shit was important to us, man. And I feel like a lot of parents saw it as like an inconvenience, or kind of like, oh God, like why do they want to come through? But for us, that was like
Should be normal.
Yeah, that was like a no-brainer for us, man. I'm not dropping my kid off at some random spot. And so we kind of like had that, ongoing behavior. And finally, like we saw more parents kind of like you, that were on the same page. But now my daughter's getting older and she's like, hey, I'm going to go kick it with these like 11 people. And I'm hearing names I've never heard before.
That's what's scary. And you can't meet those parents.
Right. And so part of me is like, I don't feel comfortable with this. And the other part of me is, well, she hasn't given me a reason to not trust her.
Right.
And so now I have to really challenge myself.
Yeah,
my wife and I have to have those conversations, like give her the trust that she's earned until she abuses it or proves otherwise. There's a couple of situations that I've helped navigate and said, hey, this probably isn't a good idea. And here's why I'm not comfortable with that. But for the most part, man, like I still want to be able to provide her that freedom because damn well, if you push, she's going to pull away.
Right. Yeah. And that's that delicate balance too, is like, you want to be protective, but not overbearing. And that's a fine ass line with kids, man. You know what I mean? Like it's, takes one misstep for them to get mad at you or like be upset with you. Like, cause like the trust goes both ways, right? Like they need to trust you, you need to trust them, but they also need to trust you. And that you're going to give them enough freedom with enough guidance and not embarrass the hell out of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, that's that two-way trust thing. That's a very, very difficult line to
What age were you guys doing like sleepovers and stuff?
Not until junior high. But that was boys, you know what I mean? So like I think that's a little different maybe. Actually no. Let me think. 6th grade junior high now? Yeah, 6th grade is junior high, right? Yeah. So
I guess
6,
so, yeah.
6, 7, 8. This is like when we were doing like sleepovers with the parents there, like camping trips with like different families, you know what I mean? Yeah. We were doing that stuff at about that age.
Yeah.
So, my daughter like just did like a sleepover for her 11th birthday. She's in 6th grade, but it was like 3 of her girlfriends at our house. Like, and like, that was it.
I always feel most comfortable, dude. Like if it's at my house, man, I'm like, I can control the environment. I make sure that my little Frenchies are like, tucked away in the room and not going to bother them. They got snacks and stuff, and I can just like listen to the giggles late,
Exactly.
I'm like, all right, cool, man. They're good. They're safe.
They were
like,
just up until 1 a.m. watching stupid TV or whatever. Yeah.
And plus like, I don't leave. I don't drink. I don't go out. I don't like do any of that shit. So I'm like, all right, cool. This is like a sound, safe place for them to be. But yeah, I see, there's kids that are still, 11, 12, 13, and their parents are like, nah, man, no sleepovers, not happening.
We have a lot of parents that are the same way that like, well, cause like my daughter had a birthday party and she had like, 10 of her girlfriends over and they all had the option to stay if they wanted, but some of the parents are like, yeah, we don't do that yet. We're like, cool, whatever, all good. See you, come pick them up at 9 o'clock then, and the rest are gonna stay. So that's totally fine.
Most of the parents are in your neighborhood.
They're all like within a mile of our house.
Most of the parents that we meet with our kids, dude, they're not in our neighborhood. They're not like around. You know what I mean? Like we even travel to get to Great Hearts, and that's tough too, man. That's like another hard part of parenting is like commingling with other parents, and I'm like, man,
hard, man.
I don't like this shit. I don't want to fake like I want to hang out with these motherfuckers, man. Like, not like I'm so cool or any of that stuff, but I'm like, dude,
your time is valuable, man.
I don't have an interest in doing the surface level conversation with random people that I don't know that I can, I can tell based off the first couple conversations that I have with them. I'm not interested in forming a friendship.
Nothing in common with them. Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to you said the social battery is already drained, and I'm not trying to give it to this stranger that's going to get nothing back, and I'm never going to see again. It's tough. That's tough. Yeah. So especially in our industry, being in hospitality, man, like you got to be on all the time. Yeah. Hey, what's up, man?
It's definitely
tough, man. It's exhausting. But yeah, the co-mingling is interesting too. Like we're cordial with all of our kids' friends' parents, and some of them we see more than others. You know what I mean? Like we become very good friends with a lot of them, and some of them are just surface level, which is totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, man. You think your kids are going to continue to go to school here, man, or they're going to go off to college?
Kylie's going to bounce immediately when she turns 18, dude. My daughter's been Miss Independent. Like, dude, she was 5 years old, and she went to Vegas with my aunt.
I actually remember this.
Yeah, and we called her. She was there for a week. We're like, "Do you miss us?" She's like, "No, I'm good. I'm gonna stay for another week." Summer? Yeah, and I was like, "Dude, my 5-year-old just cool, like chilling." And like, she's already just like, "Dad, I want to go to France. I want to go to Italy. I want to go to DC." Like, she wants to travel. She wants to go see stuff, which is great. But I think she'll be the one that is like turns 18 and gone. You know what I mean? Braden, I'm not so sure yet. You know what I mean? I could see both sides. I think he's more likely to be the guy that sticks around. But I think my daughter for sure is going to find college elsewhere.
Yeah. Both your kids are really dope, man. I love when Braden would like come to work with you, man. I remember I still had that Pathfinder, you know, and he brought the stickers.
I got a sticker for you.
He's just like, you know, I'm going to put this sticker in your car. I'm like, okay, sure, man. Yeah. And he's just like, I'm gonna put it right here. I'm like, right on the dashboard. Right where it's gonna melt into the dash, man. But I know how important it is for a kid to have an impact. And so I left that sticker there, and every time we saw each other, man, I'm like, yo, come on, let's go to the car, man. Let's go check out the sticker, bro. Like, you know, it's
he loved it.
there,
No,
man.
that was cool of you to do that, dude. He still talks about it. He's like, where's that guy with the sticker? And I'm like, yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, dude. That's cool, man. But it's interesting too. Like, I guess, you know, being involved from such a young age and watching them grow up and you know, mentality changes, behavior changes.
Yeah.
You know, things that they want to talk about change.
Correct. Yeah, I know. My daughter just is the big thing she's into, which is strange to me, is like the big thing, the trend with these kids is they just like skincare routines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At such a young age.
Yeah.
Your daughters do that too?
Of course.
Dude, they watch all the like, you know, tutorials and the get ready with me videos and crap like that. So like my daughter, so for Christmas, just thought it was great present. Like to me, I was like, I never would have thought about this when I was 11, you know. She wanted like a vanity, like a really nice vanity for Christmas.
Totally.
So that was her like big gift. We got her this big, huge, nice, fancy light up vanity with all the bells and whistles. And she put it in her room, and she's got her skincare routine that she does every morning. And like, that's like her hobby and like what she's into. And I'm like, that's dope, because you probably have dope skin when you're 50 years old. Good for you, you know?
You're going to glow through your 40s.
Yeah, I wish I did that, you know. But my son's into, you know, video games and sports and Mr. Beast stuff. You know what I mean?
You watch that?
The Beast games?
Yeah.
Show's awesome, actually.
So
I kind of
cool,
like
bro.
it.
I would do that. I feel like there's not a lot of skill to it, though, so it's just like a game of chance. But
yeah.
So,
no, it's half chance and a little bit of manipulation.
Yeah, for sure. How quickly can you fuck over your friends?
Yeah, exactly, dude. Jesus.
Well, cool, man. We are going to wrap it up for this episode, man. Cool. I appreciate you joining us, man. Before we dip out, because I love your product, because I love your brand, I wanted to get an opportunity for you to talk, I guess, just a little bit about, you know, Artisan Ice, what you do, kind of, you know, what your overall, you know, market is out here and how it came to be, man.
Yeah, man. So I started the company a little over 8 years ago. I kind of relates to parenting. I remember my daughter was 2.5, 3. My wife is pregnant with our son, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna start an ice company. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? You're insane. I'm 3 months away from delivering our second kid. And I'm like, no, and I had this idea, flew to Chicago, met this guy, kind of saw a need here in Arizona for craft ice that was not yet a necessity, but I thought was going to be in the next few years. So I kind of planted my flag, kind of bootstrapped it and just figured it out along as I went. And it changed from a luxury item to a necessity item relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And we're in over 300 places across the state. I have a great team that works with me. I employ like 10 full-time people. And you can find me all over the valley, man. And it's just cool. I got to tie in the industry I've loved and done for over 20 years, the bar and hospitality industry, and found another avenue to provide a cool product for people.
Yeah, man, it's badass. So you do different size cubes for different glassware.
We do cubes, columns, spheres, diamonds, roses. Like we'll pretty much do anything you want now. You know what I mean? So if people are looking for it, they just check out artisaniceaz.com and get our contact there, and you know, we'll pretty much do custom build ice shop for whatever you're looking for.
So if I wanted to do a wedding and have rose petals trapped inside ice, stuff like that.
Easy peasy.
Branded ice blocks.
Ice. Yep.
That's awesome.
Logos, brands, and, you know, put your face on an ice cube if you want.
That's really cool, man. I don't want that.
No, it's okay.
Nobody wants that.
That's all right. I'm saying it's an option. So.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. But yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a really cool thing, man. I'm very lucky, very blessed to have gotten the right timing and had it work out. But we love it, man. We've got to provide an awesome product and elevate cocktail programs all over the valley. And like give these bartenders that are so passionate and good at what they do another tool just to elevate their cocktails.
Yeah, that's dope. And coincidentally, we live in the hottest ass desert.
Yeah,
man, so there is a need for ice. So yeah,
just a little bit. Summers are tricky here, but we figured it out. So
that makes sense, man. Yeah, dude, love your product, love your
man.
brand, love the way you get down from a parenting standpoint, man. Love the conversation. Thank you so much for showing up.
No, thanks for having me,
man. I'd love to have you back on the show again in the future, man.
Let me know.
we'll just be probably talking about different things that are happening in our kids' life at that point in time, because 6 months can change your entire realm.
Well, it was a good foundation. We can see what changes in 6 months. So
indeed we will,
yeah.
man.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Appreciate you, man. To the viewers and listeners, thank you so much for tuning in again to another episode of the Dope Dad Podcast. You know what to do. Tell a friend, like, share, subscribe. If there's anything that you'd like to see on the show, drop a comment down below. We'll make sure that we get to it in the near future. Until then, keep it real. Thank you for joining us on the Dope Dad Podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to share it with a friend. You can support the show by giving a like, sharing, and subscribing, and you can find us on YouTube or wherever you're getting your podcast fix. If there's content you'd like to hear more of, please leave a comment. We'll make sure we try to get it in the show. Continue to tune in for more dope guests and real conversation.